Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into something truly fundamental: the interpersonal relationships of school children.
Hmm.
You sent us a fascinating piece from 1993 by R. Steve McCallum and Bruce A. Bracken in the Educational Psychology Review, and our mission is to unpack just what makes these connections with peers, parents, and teachers tick, and why they're so incredibly important for a child's development.
Absolutely.
We'll be looking at what healthy and unhealthy relationships look like, how they change as kids grow, and some of the surprising factors at play.
It's truly remarkable when you consider the sheer volume of social interaction a child experiences even before they enter formal schooling. Just think, by the time a child is around 5 years old, they've already participated in literally millions of interpersonal exchanges.
Millions. Wow.
Yeah, the article cites a study showing that mothers of infants change their facial expressions an average of 8 times per minute.
8 times a minute.
Right. That adds up to tens of thousands of interactions within just the first few months. It really highlights how these earliest, seemingly simple interactions are laying a critical groundwork for all their future social skills.
Absolutely. And the researchers provide a really helpful way to think about what a relationship actually means in this context. It's not just a one-off event, is it?
Not at all. It's a series of interactions that build upon each other over time between two people.
Right.
The crucial point is that each interaction isn't isolated. It's shaped by everything that came before and, in turn, influences what's going to happen next.
So there's a history there.
Exactly. They emphasize that reciprocal nature, that back and forth, and the vital role that memories and expectations play in keeping these connections going. It's like there are temporal bridges linking these interactions, which I think is a really insightful way to put it.
Temporal bridges. I like that. And we're primarily going to focus on those core relationship dynamics in a child's life. Those with their parents, their peers, and their teachers.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how the article categorizes these relationships based on the balance of power. They discuss vertical relationships.
Vertical, okay.
Yeah, those are with older individuals like parents and teachers, where there's a natural difference in authority.
Makes sense.
Then you have horizontal relationships with peers, kids who are roughly the same age and social standing.
Like equals.
Pretty much. And then, of course, there are mixed relationships that contain elements of both. Think of a teacher leading a group project. They hold a position of authority, but are also collaborating with the students in a way that has horizontal elements.
Ah, I see.
And it's really insightful to consider how problems can arise when these social conventions aren't maintained. For instance, if a child consistently resists taking a more submissive role with adults,
Yeah.
they might end up being labeled negatively.
Like a problem child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which can then make it even harder for them to build healthier relationships with those adults.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. What exactly are the defining characteristics of healthy versus unhealthy relationships in children, according to this research?
Well, the article provides a clear way to define them. A healthy relationship is one that's maintained by mutual agreement, based either on pleasure or need.
Okay.
And importantly, it leads to positive outcomes for everyone involved interpersonally, within themselves, and socially. If a relationship doesn't meet these criteria, you'd naturally expect one or both people to try and step away from it.
Right, you'd think so.
However, what's really important to recognize is that in unhealthy relationships, the individuals involved might not even be fully aware of the negative aspects. Think of a codependent relationship,
Oh, right.
where the harmful elements might be unseen by those within them.
That makes sense. And you mentioned that mutual give and take being more obvious in peer relationships.
Exactly. In those horizontal relationships, the give and take, the reciprocity is usually quite evident. But in vertical relationships, like between a child and an adult, it's different.
How so?
Well, it might seem like parents and teachers are just constantly doing things for children, and you might wonder what they get out of it in the immediate interaction.
Yeah. What's the payoff for the adults?
Right. But the researchers point out that adults are often rewarded for nurturing behavior by other sources, things like positive feedback from other adults or a sense of personal fulfillment. So it's not always a direct tit-for-tat with the child in that moment.
Gotcha.
But healthy relationships, whether vertical or horizontal, do involve active engagement and communication that follows social norms, like taking turns in a conversation or in the classroom. There's a level of unspoken and spoken exchange that includes some kind of reciprocity and mutual reinforcement over time.
Okay.
On the flip side, unhealthy relationships tend to show an imbalance in this engagement, maybe excessive negativity or dependence, and a failure to provide those positive reinforcers.
It sounds like it can be tricky to really put a precise figure on how common unhealthy relationships are.
That's right. Quantifying it precisely is difficult. However, the article does highlight some interesting figures. One study found that around a quarter of 5-year-old boys and about 11% of girls showed excessive aggression.
A quarter of boys.
Yeah, and around 15% of boys and 16% of girls displayed excessive shyness or avoidance.
Hmm.
They also reference diagnostic manuals noting that a certain percentage of children receive diagnoses like conduct disorder, which includes behaviors such as lying, stealing, and cruelty, things often observed in children involved in unhealthy relationships.
Right.
And it's quite striking that a significant percentage, somewhere between 30% and 75%, of children referred to guidance clinics have peer problems reported by their parents.
That high.
It's
75%.
a wide range,
Yeah.
but yeah, potentially that high in some studies. So while we can't put an exact number on unhealthy relationships, these figures really underscore how significant these relationship dynamics are for children's well-being.
Wow, that really highlights the importance of these relationship dynamics for children's overall well-being. Now, let's talk about how these relationships actually develop. It's not a static picture, is it?
Not at all. The influence of parents, peers, and teachers shifts depending on a child's age, their environment, and the specific roles these individuals take on. For instance, the way parents interact might be influenced by whether they feel they need to pass on specific job skills to their children.
Right, context matters. And parental style seems to be a really significant factor, right?
Uh-huh.
The researchers discuss a four-part framework.
Yes, Macoby and Martin's framework is incredibly useful here. They outline 4 main parenting patterns: authoritarian, autocratic,
Okay.
indulgent, permissive, authoritative, reciprocal, and indifferent, uninvolved.
Lots of terms there.
Yeah, they basically differ in how accepting and responsive the parents are compared to how demanding and controlling they are. Now, it's important to distinguish between authoritarian and authoritative parenting.
Right, they sound similar but are quite different.
Exactly. While both involve setting rules, authoritarian parents tend to be very strict and demanding without much warmth or explanation. Think, because I said so.
Got it.
Whereas authoritative parents also set clear limits, but are more responsive, explaining their reasoning and encouraging independence. More give and take.
Okay, so what are the typical outcomes associated with each of these styles?
Well, children of authoritarian parents tend to struggle socially and can be more withdrawn. On the other hand, authoritative parenting, which, as we just discussed, balances clear expectations with warmth and support, is linked to kids who are more independent, socially responsible, and better at managing aggression.
That sounds like the ideal then.
It often seems to lead to the most positive outcomes, yeah. Indulgent parenting can lead to children who are impulsive, aggressive, and dependent.
Spoiled, maybe.
Could be perceived that way. And sadly, children of indifferent or uninvolved parents often develop socially inappropriate behaviors and are more vulnerable to negative peer influences, even starting things like tobacco and drug use earlier.
That's tough.
It really is. The key takeaway here is that balancing clear expectations with warmth and support, that authoritative style, appears to be the most conducive to healthy social development.
It's interesting how the researchers also delve into the nuances within those styles, like the difference between authoritarian and authoritative mothers.
Precisely. Baumrien's work showed that authoritarian mothers, those who really emphasize control and obedience, tend to have children who are more hostile and less friendly.
Okay.
In contrast, authoritative mothers are more effective at teaching those desired social behaviors and are even more effective in how they use punishment. And they're also more likely to be imitated by their children.
So the kids actually learn more from that style.
Seems that way. And it's not just about these broad parenting styles, is it? Specific parental behaviors during play, for example, seem to have an impact on a child's popularity.
Really? How so?
Well, McDonald and Park's research suggests that popular boys often have parents who are engaging and elicit positive emotions during play, with mothers who are less directive and more physically playful.
Interesting. And for girls?
For girls rated as popular by their teachers, they found a pattern of physically playful but non-directive fathers and more directive mothers.
Huh. Different dynamics there.
It really highlights how different parental behaviors can contribute to a child's social standing. It's complex.
The article also touches on the significant impact of parental stress.
Yes, and it's a really important factor. Marital discord, for example, is linked to childhood aggression, which, as we discussed earlier, is negatively associated with peer acceptance.
Right, that connection again.
However, there's a positive note here. Children who maintain a positive relationship with at least one parent during times of family turmoil tend to be more resilient and less likely to develop social problems compared to those who feel disconnected from both parents.
So one strong bond can make a big difference.
It seems to act as a buffer, yeah.
And socioeconomic factors also come into play, it seems.
They do. Some research found that middle-class mothers tend to engage in more verbal exchanges with their children compared to mothers from lower socioeconomic backgrounds.
More talking.
Essentially, yes. There's also the sobering statistic linking increased unemployment to a rise in child abuse. And some dissertation research suggested that children of full-time working mothers sometimes showed poorer school adaptation compared to those whose mothers didn't work full-time.
But that's just one study, right? Lots of factors there.
Absolutely. It's important not to oversimplify. These are complex correlations.
It sounds like a lot of these negative effects can be lessened by support.
Absolutely. Research found that support from both parents and teachers can indeed buffer the impact of family stress on children's social development.
So the school plays a role too.
Definitely. And generally, parental mental health is strongly tied to a child's social and emotional well-being. It really underscores the idea that children learn a tremendous amount about relationships by observing and interacting with their primary caregivers.
That role modeling effect.
Exactly. As one researcher succinctly put it, positive, agreeable mothers had positive, agreeable children, highlighting that powerful effect. So what we're starting to see is a complex interplay where early parental interactions really lay the groundwork for how children navigate the peer world, and teachers then play a crucial role in shaping those interactions within the school environment.
That's a really powerful takeaway. Let's shift our focus now to the influence of peers. It's often said that peer relationships become increasingly important as children grow. What does the research tell us about that?
Oh, peer relations in childhood are incredibly predictive. Parker and Asher's work, for instance, shows they can foreshadow adjustment in later life, influence sex role development, and even play a role in moral development.
Wow.
These relationships provide a crucial foundation for emotional security and for understanding the unspoken and spoken rules of society.
Learning the social ropes, basically.
Exactly. Sadly, poor peer relationships in childhood and adolescence have been linked to things like aggression, dropping out of school, and even involvement in juvenile crime.
So it's serious stuff.
Very serious. What your sources underscore is that difficulties forming healthy peer bonds early on aren't just childhood bumps. They can cast a long shadow into adulthood, affecting everything from career to relationships.
And Parker and Asher identified specific dimensions of peer relations that are particularly important predictors of later difficulties.
Yes, they focused on acceptance, aggressiveness, and shyness or withdrawal. Their findings strongly suggest that low acceptance and aggressiveness are significant predictors of dropping out of school and criminality.
Okay, those two seem clearly linked.
Right. The link between shyness or withdrawal and later maladjustment was something they noted needed further investigation at the time. But overall, their conclusion was quite stark. Children who struggle with peer relationships are at a significant risk for various social problems later on, including marital and employment issues, and a higher likelihood of cumulative problems like school dropout and retention.
It's sobering to think that childhood peer difficulties can have such long-lasting consequences. What are some of the personal characteristics that seem to be associated with social acceptance and successful relationship building among peers?
Several factors come into play. Physical attractiveness can be a factor, although it seems to matter most at the extremes, very high or very low attractiveness.
So, not so much for average-looking kids.
Less predictive in the middle range, it seems. A sense of humor is also a definite asset. As one researcher noted, it's hard to dislike someone who makes you laugh.
True.
Though it's crucial to emphasize that aggressive humor doesn't help with peer acceptance.
Right, making fun of people versus just being funny.
Exactly.
Interestingly, the research even touches on things like names and birth order.
It does. Hardup's work suggests that even having an unusual name can lead to lower social acceptability compared to children with more common names.
Seriously, just a name.
Apparently it's you, according to that research. And studies on birth order have found that firstborn children tend to be less popular than later-born children.
That's quite unexpected. Why would that be? The article doesn't say.
It doesn't elaborate much on the why, just notes the correlation found in those studies.
Huh. Okay. What about more tangible skills and competencies?
Competence in physical, intellectual, and academic areas is definitely related to social influence. Academic and cognitive skill deficits, as well as being in special education, can negatively impact social acceptance.
That makes sense.
Similarly, physical handicaps can sometimes lead to lower acceptance by peers.
Hmm.
The research on how people explain their successes and failures, called attribution theory, also gives us some clues. Socially successful individuals tend to believe their successes are due to internal and controllable factors like their own ability and effort.
So they take credit for their wins.
More so than those who are less socially successful, yeah. They attribute it to themselves rather than just luck or circumstance.
The ability to navigate conflict seems absolutely crucial for maintaining friendships.
Absolutely. Gottman's research on children who become friends highlights that they use softer conflict resolution strategies, have less heated disagreements, and are more likely to remain friends after a conflict.
Even though they might argue more.
Right, even though they might disagree more frequently overall, it's how they disagree that matters.
Right.
Asher also provided a great list of what good relationship builders do. They know how to join ongoing activities, they're fun and able to share, and they know how to inhibit negative behaviors.
So social skills in action.
Exactly. For adolescents, the skills needed to expand to include initiating conversations, self-disclosing appropriately, offering emotional support, tactfully disagreeing, and managing conflicts effectively.
More sophisticated stuff.
Definitely. So we see that certain personal traits can influence how readily children are accepted. But what happens when disagreements arise? How do children who maintain good relationships navigate those inevitable conflicts? It's really about those skills.
So it's a complex interplay of personal characteristics and learned social skills. And it sounds like being able to see things from another person's perspective is also really key.
Exactly. Research found that children who are better at perspective taking, essentially the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand how they might be feeling or thinking, and who are more altruistic, tend to have more stable and close friendships.
Empathy and kindness matter.
Big time. And effective relationship builders also tend to elicit more responses from others, which in turn gives them more opportunities to practice and refine their social skills. It's like a positive feedback loop.
Makes sense. Let's move on to the role of teachers now. Their influence is obviously different from that of parents or peers. How do teachers impact children's interpersonal relationships?
Teachers have a direct influence through their interactions with students, but also an indirect influence through the way they structure the classroom environment, particularly the rules they establish.
Classroom rules, okay.
Research shows how quickly children internalize classroom rules, and whether a child complies with these rules can significantly affect their relationship with the teacher. Children who consistently fail to comply might be labeled as troublemakers.
Oh,
And other research indicates that once these labels are acquired, it can damage the teacher-student relationship even before the teacher really gets to know the child.
first impressions really stick, huh?
They can, unfortunately.
The article also mentions different types of relationships that teachers tend to form with their students.
Yes, Silberman identified 4 qualitative types: attachment, concern, indifference, and rejection.
Okay, break those down.
Teachers tend to form attachments with achieving and conforming students.
The good students.
Often perceived that way, yes. They show concern for students who are appropriately demanding, often overlook quiet and withdrawn students.
The ones who don't cause trouble but maybe need help.
Exactly. And may unfortunately reject students who make what they perceive as illegitimate demands. Maybe constantly acting out, demanding attention in disruptive ways, things like that.
It sounds like students who are already struggling academically might find themselves in a negative cycle in their relationships with teachers and peers.
That's a crucial point. Slavin notes that students who experience failure in the classroom often have difficulty relating to both teachers and peers because they feel they're receiving little or no support.
Feeling isolated?
Right. This can lead to either acting out or withdrawing as ways to cope in what they perceive as a negative environment. It's a cycle where early academic struggles can unfortunately feed into negative social interactions.
Yeah, that sounds really tough for those kids. Now let's consider how these relationships evolve as children develop. Are there noticeable shifts in the nature and importance of these different relationships as kids get older?
Definitely. The very nature of peer relationships changes as a child's cognitive development progresses. Younger children don't really grasp the idea of mutual attachment and shared interests in the same way older children do.
Friendship means something different to a 5-year-old than a 15-year-old.
Exactly. For example, 2-year-olds might show social preferences, but they don't form true friendships in the way we understand them later. Older preschoolers start to have a vague sense of mutuality, cooperation, and commitment, but it's really in middle childhood and early adolescence that more advanced criteria for friendship emerge.
Like what?
Things like mutual understanding, loyalty, and self-disclosure, deeper connection.
Okay. And what about the scope of their social networks as they age? Does it just get bigger?
Well, research on children aged 3 to 9 shows that young children initially have a home-centered existence where family is the most immediate and important part of their social network.
Makes sense.
However, as they get older and more competent interacting with the world outside their home, their social networks predictably become more elaborate and extensive.
They branch out.
Right. While the absolute number of contacts with relatives might increase between ages 3 and 9, the proportion of those contacts actually decreases compared to the total number of contacts with non-family members. So, family remains important, but children have more daily contact with friends and other non-relatives as they age.
That makes intuitive sense. What about the relationship with parents during adolescence? A time often associated with changing dynamics as teenagers seek more independence.
Bracken's cross-sectional study of adolescents aged 9 to 19 provides some interesting insights here. Consistent with the findings on younger children, he found that the youngest group, the 9 and 10-year-olds, reported the most positive relationships with their parents.
Oh,
These generally positive relationships tended to show a gradual decline until around ages 18 and 19.
a decline. Why is that?
Bracken suggests this perceived decrease is developmentally linked to the ongoing preparation for independence that occurs during these years, pulling away a bit.
Ah, okay. Part of growing up.
Seems like it.
But even with that shift towards independence, family still holds significant importance for adolescents, it seems.
Absolutely. Despite the decline in perceived positive interactions with parents during adolescence, Bracken's later work showed that children's sense of themselves within their family remains significantly stronger than their self-concepts in other areas like social, academic, or physical abilities throughout those years.
So family identity is still a bedrock.
Exactly. It continues to be a very important source of security, even with increased stress in parent-child relationships.
Now, the article also highlights some interesting gender differences in children's relationships. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Research on pre-adolescent children showed systematic gender differences in their social behaviors and networks. Predictably, between ages 3 and 9, boys increasingly interacted more with other boys and less with girls.
Boys play with boys.
Right, while girls showed the opposite trend. And Hardup noted that the greatest separation in peer interactions based on gender occurs in late elementary and early junior high, the cooties stage, maybe.
Huh, maybe. Does that change later on?
Yes. Bracken's research indicates that cross-gender peer relations improve significantly across adolescence, while same-gender relations remain relatively consistent.
So they start mixing more again.
Exactly.
And in terms of the quality of these relationships, are there any consistent gender patterns?
Yes. Females consistently report more positive interpersonal relations than males across both childhood and adolescence, particularly during the elementary and adolescent years.
Girls report better relationships overall.
Generally, yes, according to this research. Girls in Bracken's study also consistently reported more positive relationships with other girls than boys did with other boys.
Interesting. What about parents?
When it comes to relationships with parents, girls tended to rate their relationships with their mothers more positively than with their fathers, and also more positively than boys rated their relationships with either parent.
Okay, and boys.
Boys, on the other hand, tended to rate their relationships with their mothers more positively than with their fathers, suggesting a seemingly stronger attachment to mothers in boys.
So a bit of a pattern there with mothers for both genders, maybe.
Seems like it based on these findings. Overall, the research strongly suggests that females tend to experience more positive and intimate interpersonal relations than males throughout development.
This is all incredibly insightful. Now, shifting gears slightly, the article also discusses how we can actually assess these complex interpersonal relationships in children. What kind of tools and techniques are available to educators and psychologists?
There are various tools, and the article groups them into a few main categories. First, there are self-report measures.
Where the kids rate themselves.
Exactly. Children or adolescents provide their own perceptions of their relationships. While these have limitations like potential bias and the tendency to give socially desirable answers,
Wanting to look good.
right, they can still offer valuable insights into a child's perspective. Examples mentioned include the Assessment of Interpersonal Relations, AR, which looks at perceived relationship quality with parents, peers, and teachers for ages 9 to 19.
Okay.
And the Interpersonal Style Inventory, ISI, for older adolescents and adults, which assesses broader interpersonal functioning.
Yeah.
There's also the Children's Self-Efficacy for Peer Interaction Scale, CSPI, for younger elementary students, focusing on their perceived ability to use pro-social skills.
Got it. Then there are the drawing assessment procedures, which seem a bit more open to interpretation.
That's a fair assessment. The article points out that applying strict scientific standards to evaluate drawings is debated due to concerns about their reliability and validity.
So maybe not the most solid evidence.
It's controversial. However, some researchers believe they can offer projective insights into a child's underlying concerns and perceptions. Human figure drawings, for instance, operate on the assumption that children project their needs and feelings into their drawings.
Like drawing big hands means something.
Potentially, like extended arms, possibly suggesting a desire for connection. The kinetic family drawing, KFD, asks children to draw their family doing something, with interpretations focusing on things like figure size and how close they are to each other to infer social status and relationships.
But different people might see different things in the drawing.
Exactly. Whether different raters would consistently interpret these drawings in the same way has been questioned.
Okay. And what about methods that directly involve a child's peers in the assessment process?
That falls under the category of sociometrics. These techniques involve asking peers to rate a child's social standing, for example, by asking them to name classmates they'd most or least like to play with.
Ah, the who do you want to play with question.
Basically, yes. This can lead to classifying children into categories like popular, rejected, neglected, average, or controversial.
Rejected and neglected sound worrying.
They are categories used in this type of research. While the specific reasons children give for these choices aren't always clear, factors like academic success, attractiveness, and athletic ability can play a role. How consistently these ratings hold up over time and how well they reflect real social dynamics can vary.
Depends on the group and when you ask.
Exactly.
Lastly, the article mentions behavior rating scales and classroom observations.
Yes, behavior rating scales involve third-party ratings, usually by teachers or parents, of a wide range of behaviors, including social functioning. There are several well-known examples like the Achenbach Child Behavior Checklist and the Social Skills Rating System.
So someone else is observing the child's behavior.
Right. These tend to be considered more reliable because they focus on specific observable behaviors. Finally, classroom observations involve formal systems for observing specific social behaviors, both prosocial, like turn-taking and showing kindness, and antisocial, like aggression or stealing.
Watching kids in action.
Pretty much. For these observations to be useful, it's really important that different observers agree on what they are seeing, and that a single observer is consistent in their ratings over time. Reliability is key.
So there's a whole array of tools available to try and understand these complex social dynamics in children. Now, the crucial question is, once we identify areas where children are struggling in their relationships, what can be done about it? The article discusses classroom interventions for promoting social skills.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really practical. The article highlights that teachers, counselors, and psychologists have a range of interventions at their disposal, drawing from different ideas about how social skills develop, like through thinking processes, learned behaviors, and social interactions.
Different theories, different approaches.
Right. And it notes that approaches that focus on behavior often have strong evidence supporting their effectiveness.
Let's delve into some of these approaches. The article first mentions social cognitive interventions.
Yes. These focus on helping children develop better thinking skills related to social situations.
Thinking about social stuff better.
Exactly. Things like problem solving, understanding other people's perspectives, and considering the consequences of their actions. Common techniques include talking through scenarios, demonstrating appropriate behaviors, modeling, providing encouragement, role-playing.
Practicing.
Right, practicing different situations, teaching self-talk strategies, giving feedback, and having group discussions. Shuren's SpeedX program, which specifically taught children how to think about different solutions, potential outcomes, and the steps needed to achieve a goal, is a well-known example.
Sounds helpful.
While these programs are promising, the article points out that research comparing them to other approaches suggests they may not be as consistently effective as those that focus more directly on behavior.
Okay. What about behavioral interventions specifically?
These focus on directly changing behavior by managing what happens before and after a behavior occurs, the antecedents and consequences. They often use techniques like modeling and coaching.
Showing and telling.
Kind of. The consultative intervention described by Elliott, Sheridan, and Gresham, which involved teachers and parents working together to support a withdrawn child, is an example. Interestingly, the article notes that directly teaching social skills to unpopular children has had somewhat limited success,
Why is that?
often because the skills learned in one setting, like a special group, don't always transfer to other situations like the playground or the regular classroom. Generalization is tricky.
Ah, okay. But the article then points to a particularly promising approach: cooperative learning environments.
Yes, this seems to be a really powerful strategy, drawing from both how we learn through behavior and how social development unfolds. Cooperative learning involves structuring group activities so that students realize their success depends on the success of everyone in their group.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Pretty much. It focuses on both the academic task and the rewards. Research, including Slavin's work, indicates that cooperative learning can lead to significant academic benefits.
So they learn more academically too.
Yes. But importantly for our discussion, these environments naturally encourage and reinforce social skills and can be specifically designed for primary social skills training. The most effective approaches seem to be those that combine academic goals with social skill development within these cooperative groups.
Best of both worlds.
Exactly. Showing improvements in how students interact, how accepted they are by their peers, their attitudes towards school, and their academic achievement.
It sounds like this approach can be beneficial for students across different age groups, although perhaps it needs to be adapted slightly depending on their developmental stage.
That's a good point. While younger elementary children might engage more readily, cooperative learning can certainly be effective for older students as well, especially when there's appropriate motivation through group rewards and individual accountability.
So you need the right setup.
Definitely. Key elements for successful cooperative learning include having common goals, producing something together, directly teaching the interpersonal skills needed, ensuring shared responsibility, fostering a supportive and accepting environment, making individuals accountable, and providing success experiences based on working together.
It's quite structured then.
It needs to be to work well. The article highlights a range of positive outcomes for students in cooperative environments,
Like what?
including being more helpful, sharing information effectively, providing constructive feedback, supporting each other's goals, acting trustingly, feeling less anxious in social situations, striving for mutual benefit, having higher self-esteem, and being able to see things from more complex perspectives. It's quite a list.
That sounds incredibly comprehensive and really encouraging. So, to bring all of this together, what are the real key insights from this deep dive into the research on interpersonal relationships among school children?
Well, as your sources clearly show, a child's journey through school is deeply and intricately connected to the quality of their relationships. It's not just a side issue.
Right. It's central.
Exactly. From those very first interactions with parents in infancy all the way through to the complex dynamics they navigate daily with peers and teachers, these connections profoundly shape their social, emotional, and even their academic paths. The research really emphasizes the critical importance of positive, mutually supportive exchanges.
The good stuff.
Yeah. And strongly highlights the potential risks that are associated with unhealthy relationship patterns, the long-term consequences we talked about.
And it's empowering to learn that there are proactive steps that can be taken to foster these positive connections.
Absolutely. That's the hopeful part. The identification of various assessment tools and particularly intervention strategies like cooperative learning offers real hope. It means we're not just stuck observing problems.
We can actually do something.
Right. Educators and caregivers have concrete ways to understand and actively promote healthy relationship building among children. The focus on creating environments where collaboration and social skills are explicitly encouraged and rewarded provides a really promising way forward.
This has been such a fascinating and incredibly insightful deep dive. It really makes you think about the far-reaching effects of these early social experiences.
It really does.
So on that note, here's a final thought for you to consider. Given the profound and lasting impact of these early interpersonal experiences influencing everything from how well they do in school to their later relationships and overall well-being, how might we, as a wider community, better support the development of these crucial social skills?
Good question.
Not just within the walls of the classroom, but also in the home and in all the different social environments children navigate. This deep dive really underscores that fostering positive relationships isn't just a matter of childhood development. It's truly an investment in a healthier and more connected future for everyone.